What is going on, everybody? It is Dylan with DFS, bringing you a brand new video. Today's video, we're going over running backs to target for week one. And honestly, for the running back room, quite a bit of names here going over the list, whether it be good matchups or good pricing. So starting off is Jonathan Taylor at 7,800. Obviously, you're paying a premium for Jonathan Taylor on this slate, which is very... I mean, if you go and look at the wide receiver pricing in some of the matchups there, it might be hard to afford Jonathan Taylor. But you saw what Indy was able to do against Houston last year. Jonathan Taylor didn't play the first game against Houston. That was Zach Moss, and Zach Moss had a great game. But you look at Jonathan Taylor, 30 for 188, a touchdown, 2 receptions for 8 yards, 30 DraftKings points. So an explosive week. You go and look at Zach Moss against them. Zach Moss also had a crazy good game too as well. But yeah, if you could afford him, he's definitely worth a play. Obviously, Houston has made upgrades to their defense. I think their defense did take a step. But still, the offensive line of Indy, if they continue to build off of what they did last season, I think it'll be a good year for the run game for Jonathan Taylor and Anthony Richardson. We go down. James Cook is in the next name that stands out to me here. Obviously, I like Bijan, but I think for his price and the matchup, it's very tough, right? I'd rather pay it for Taylor, kind of go down to James Cook here. Going against Arizona, Arizona has been at least the last 2 seasons worth of data. They've been a bottom 5 defense against the run. You look at the yardage they allowed on the ground, not in receiving, just on the ground alone, and they've allowed quite a bit, right? James Cook, obviously, we can go back and look at his pricing. You're kind of paying a higher price on James Cook. If you look over there, you're paying a higher price for him. They don't bring in a real threat to him. I think they brought in support pieces behind him, but hopefully no one to steal his touchdowns like Latavius Murray kind of did. Obviously, Josh Allen is going to get his rushing touchdowns, but look, James Conner, 6 touchdowns. 6. You want to know how many came through the ground? 2 for James Cook. I think we see a different upside in James Cook this season, but for this matchup, I think it's a really good one. I already mentioned how bad I think Arizona's defense is, and they just need to add pieces. For a defensive coach, they need to add some defensive pieces there to really get some type of core and build off of. So James Cook's a great play. Devon Achane, this one is risky. Like I mentioned, there's a lot of good wide receiver plays this week. Devon Achane at 6,800, you're paying a hefty price for him, right? Obviously, you look at where his price started, where it went to, started to go down, and that's where we're at right now. But you look at the games last year, right? Against Baltimore, 26, against Washington, 25, New York, 25, Buffalo, 30, Denver, 54. His boom weeks are amazing, right? And obviously, injuries happen. But you look at some of his down weeks, too. 12.1, 9.2, 4.1, 6. For the price, 13, right? Like, those are not good prices for a $6,800 running back. I still think it's a good matchup for Miami, but you have to consider Raheem Mostert, who, when healthy, got more consistent work, and his points were just consistently better, right? Now, Achane has the higher upside. We know he has the more explosiveness. Raheem Mostert's still a very fast running back in this league. The touchdown upside is clearly there for Mostert as well, and you're paying $400 cheaper. So you have to play that into consideration if you're going to play up for somebody like Achane, who is going to split snaps. We know that coming off the gate, he is splitting snaps, right? Some of these other running backs, yes, they're not going to get 100% of the snaps, but they're going to get a majority of them. And right below him is Alvin Kamara against Carolina. Carolina trades away their best defensive player in the offseason. They bring in Jadeveon Clowney. They still have Brown, who's one of the best defensive tackles in the league, especially against the run. But Kendre Miller has been hurt, and Allen has come out and said some negative things about him. They get a new play caller. maybe changes some stuff up, makes it easier for Alvin Kamara Jamal Williams has looked very underperforming in his time with New Orleans so far. But Kamara against Carolina is one that I'm really targeting at 6,700. If you're kind of looking for that top price of where you're paying for a running back, yeah, Alvin Kamara is there. Joe Mixon, like you could look at the points last season that Indy gave up. I don't know if I'm willing to take Joe Mixon and the Houston offensive line against Indy and their defensive line. Indy played their run very well against Houston last season. Obviously, that's Devin Singletary and Dameon Pierce versus Joe Mixon and Dameon Pierce. I just don't like the matchup. You got to remember DeForest Buckner is still a threat there. I think their linebackers are definitely taking a step up. It's just not a risk I'm willing to take. Obviously, I think I want to get him in some tournament forms, but I don't know if I'm really targeting him in cash. I mentioned Raheem Mostert. Rashard White, I'm down on Rashard White compared to others this season as a whole, but I do think week one it's a very good matchup for him. We know that Tampa Bay really gets our offense going when the run game is going. I think that makes Baker Mayfield better. We saw it in Cleveland. I won't say we saw it in Carolina, but we saw it last season in Tampa where the run game was going. Baker Mayfield seemed a little more comfortable. Him and Mike Evans and Chris Godwin were able to do some crazy things. But the reason I'm lower on Rashard White this season is Sean Tucker has looked really, really good in preseason. They bring in Bucky Irving, who can help out basically Rashard White so he doesn't have to take, whatever the percent was last season. It was a very high number compared to every other running back in the league. I think his volume is going to go down. It doesn't mean his production is also going to go down. But I'm just not willing to take that bet on the entire season. He's going to replicate what he did and have a Kyren Williams. I think Kyren Williams is a better running back, just clear and cut. But Rashard White against a Washington team who they traded two really good defensive linemen. They brought in some names to try to, at least be a competitive team this season, both offensively and defensively, to be a competitive team. But I like this matchup as an over matchup. I think, Tampa lost some pieces. Washington obviously lost some pieces, especially in their defensive back. So Rashard White is a name that I like in this matchup. James Conner's one I'm kind of iffy on. I may add to my list. Going forward, I'll see, but as of right now, it's a no, right? I think Ken Walker against Denver, who Denver did not. Denver's the same as Arizona, and when you're paying a quarterback, $35 million worth of dead cap, it's really hard to replace players like that. So Ken Walker against Denver, to where you're hoping Seattle's offensive line takes a step forward, a new offensive coordinator, but against a Denver defense who is very bad against the run. Obviously, if you take the week 2 matchup or whatever it was against Miami, where they allowed 70 points, you take that out, they still were very bad over the run. Ken Walker, with Zach Charbonnet is to watch out for. Zach Charbonnet's out for whatever reason. It's just something to monitor. But Ken Walker against Denver, bottom 5 rushing defense that really didn't add anybody to their 7. So he's a name that I'm looking at. We continue to go down. Zach Moss is a name to watch for 5,800 against New England. New England's got, I'd say New England has a good secondary, but losing someone like Judon is a big pain. Obviously, new play calling on both sides of the ball. Am I willing to take that shot on Chase Brown, Zach Moss yet? No. Right? I don't. Chase Brown down at 5,000, right? Like that's what we're watching for, is who the lead back is. So I think for tournament wise, you could throw in Zach Moss and Chase Brown, but honestly, if we get news that Chase Brown is, clear cut and starts to perform at 5,000, I think is a good value. But you have to take that risk that Zach Moss might be the hotter hand that day and take those snaps. So for cash, it's risky. If we get confirmation, that's different. Ezekiel Elliott against Cleveland, right? Even in New England, Zeke was still putting up good numbers, right? Whether it had to be through the receiving game, which won't happen in Dallas as much, but he got his volume in the run game. His production wasn't there, clearly. You could look at it, 3.5 yards a rush. You have to factor in, though, that's New England's offensive line, not Dallas's offensive line. They're going against a Cleveland defense who is very good against the run, but I'm looking at kind of the secondary for Cleveland and some opportunities for Dallas's pass game. What Dallas failed in last year compared to previously is being able to run the ball in the red zone, especially the goal line. Like, they need to be able to do that, and that's what Zeke is efficient at. So Zeke at 58, I like the touchdown upside, right? Obviously, we're not expecting a Devon Achane where you get 50 points because he's just blowing by everybody, just outrunning. No, that's not Zeke. He's going to get carries. He's going to get consistent carries, and he has the touchdown upside. I think it's worth noting. Zamir White, 5,700 against the Chargers. This one worries me, but I think with how bad the Chargers secondary is outside of Asante Samuel and Derwin James, obviously if their defensive line can finally be healthy and do what they're paid a lot of money to do, if they could get it all together, the Chargers defense could be different. But until then, someone like Zamir White, 5,700, you go and look at the Chargers game where he got his first shot, 17 for 69, a touchdown, and then 3 receptions for 16 yards, gets you 17.5. Obviously, his prices went up from 4,400 to 5,700, but I think it's a good matchup overall. Only other few names that I'm going to throw out there for now. Obviously, you can see there's still some injuries. Javonte Williams against Seattle. Seattle's another team that was very poor against the run. I don't believe brought in anybody different, really, on that defensive front. So Javonte Williams with P. Ryan gone. Obviously, you have McLaughlin there. Estiming is going to be the goal line back. I think they've made that pretty clear. They want to get him involved. But I still think Javonte Williams is in a really good spot here. We know what Peyton is able to do for his running back. So at 5,500 against Seattle, I think it's a really good price. I think it's a very good value. 5,500 is kind of that sweet spot for a running back that you like. Jerome Ford's another name to watch out for. Obviously, going against Dallas, that's worrisome. But we're just gonna click Cleveland's depth chart here. You could go and read anywhere and get more updates. But you just look at this, right? We already know Nick Chubb's out. We already know Hines is out. You look at Foreman with his rib injury. Pierre Strong, I think, has a rib injury. So Jerome Ford is looking like the standout guy, the only guy that is healthy in that running back room. So that's definitely another name to throw out there at the 5,500 mark. And then Gus Edwards down here, 5,300, going against Vegas. Obviously, Vegas adds Wilkins to their defensive line, which is concerning. Chargers obviously want to run the ball. We know Gus Edwards, J.K. Dobbins are going to get their rushing attempts. But the touchdown upside for Chargers running backs is probably going to be Gus Edwards. Very efficient for Baltimore last year in doing that. He's a name. Chuba Hubbard, we just got confirmation. Brooks is going to be out the first 4 games, so Chuba Hubbard could be a name to watch out for. I don't like it in this matchup, but he's definitely something to watch out for. Trey Benson, Tajay Spears, 5,100, not Trey Benson. Against Chicago. Chicago, very bad against the passing game for running backs. On the ground, it wasn't good for opposing running backs, but Tajay Spears a name to definitely watch out for as well. J.K. Dobbins, I mentioned, 4,900. Other than that, there's not really anybody as of right now that stands out unless an injury happens. So let me know who you guys are looking at. Let me know if you agree, disagree with any of the guys I said today. We'll have the wide receiver, tight end. If you guys are interested in defense, I could do a defense as well. That will be going out probably next week, those videos, as well as the showdown videos that'll be going up. So if you guys are interested, check that out. I will see you guys in the next one.